If I turn around and say, Nick, don't eat corn, don't eat rice, you're like, all right. But if I tell you not to eat bread, you'd be like, I'm not doing that. Right there has got to tell you something that it's got a very addictive characteristic trait, and it does because the opiate receptor side of your brain is what recognizes wheat or gliadin. It's a matter of your life, and your health. And if you do have undiagnosed celiac, it could be shaving decades off your life. And before people click off this video because they have short attention spans, they need to realize that gluten can cause a problem systemically in the body. It could be stubborn weight loss that doesn't come off. It could be acne. It could be itchy bleep. Okay, it could be a bad back, it could be a bugged knee or a wrist. There's a lot of problems that gluten, the protein molecule gliadin, can cause in the human body. We're gonna unpack that today.
All right, this week's episode's on gluten. This is something that is very personal for me, I think for you as well.
Yep.
I was having major back pain. This was maybe 12, 15 years ago in my life. And I wasn't very overweight. And I'd been to some doctors, and the doctor's initial reaction was painkillers. And even at that time, I said, I don't think painkillers are what I want to do to myself in my day-to-day life to deal with this.
How old were you now?
I was, I guess, in my early 30s.
Okay.
So
you're young.
And I was young, and I couldn't bend over to tie my shoes.
And how long did that go on before you went to the doctor?
For, probably a couple months. It was going on for a while.
Because back pain's a huge thing for people.
And it was actually my neck and my lower back. And there were two main points that were totally inflamed. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And so we have a mutual friend who is in really good shape, but has also had some back pain. And he said, Lynch says it might be
Your diet.
It might be your diet.
And you're like, that Lynch doesn't know what he's talking about. It's my back. It's not my diet.
Seriously.
So that's why you don't want to tune off this video right now, because gluten can cause a myriad of problems now.
A lot of problems. And I was aware of celiac disease because I do have people in my wife's family who have celiacs, which is, a digestion problem.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was what was going on with me. But at that point, when you're in pain in your life.
I didn't know you had celiac in your family.
In my wife's family. In
your wife's family.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you're in major pain, you'll try anything.
Especially back pain.
Especially back pain.
It's debilitating, man.
Yeah, it's the hub, right? It's the center of that wheel.
Yep.
The wheel's not going to spin if the hub is messed up.
Yeah.
And you can have great knees, great elbows, a great everything, but if your back is messed up, like, you're relegated to laying down or in a chair or whatever feels good at that point.
Right. And before people click off this video because they have short attention spans, they need to realize that gluten can cause a problem systemically in the body. It's not just about because a lot of people might say, I don't have a back problem, let me go away. It could be stubborn weight loss that doesn't come off. It could be acne. It could be itchy bleep. Okay, it could be a bad back. It could be a bugged knee or a wrist. There's a lot of problems that gluten, the protein molecule gliadin, can cause in the human body. We're going to unpack that today.
Okay. All right. Well, let me just say thank you, because it's been a long time now and I've been off gluten. Now, that being said, there are times where I cheat. And I will, if I'm out somewhere or traveling, let's say in a different country, and I may never be back, and there's like a thing there that has gluten in it, I pay for it.
You pay for it.
I pay for it.
Yeah.
Usually if it's just a little bit of a cheat, I get a very stiff neck.
Yep.
A very stiff neck. It doesn't go back to my back unless I've really gone down the line and said, because there have been one or two times where I said, maybe I'm not allergic anymore.
Yeah.
Let me try. I'm going to do a month where I go back on gluten.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my back is like crazy.
Yeah, I forget what video we talked about it, but there are certain foods that if you abstain for 6, 12 weeks, you can do what's called rehabilitate yourself.
Dairy
like eggs and dairy.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then most people can't go back full bore. They can do like let's say somebody has an egg allergy or an intolerance.
Yeah.
They can abstain from it, and then maybe they could have eggs once or twice a week. And then with you were able to have dairy every day and have no problem,
I can have
right?
a glass of milk now.
Gluten, unfortunately, is an all or nothing thing.
Yeah.
And you can go and sneak it in here and there, But most people will pay and they'll know. And then you make a decision whether, provided you don't have celiac disease.
Right.
'Cause
Celiac, there's no
that could be a life
cheating.
or death situation.
Correct.
And I think there's even some cancers they could be linked to for people to keep on eating this. And it's detrimental to those people. They want to stay away from it and stay away from it forever.
And specifically, one of the family members that I have that is celiac, I mean, if they have even a cross-contamination, they're throwing up for hours.
Projectile vomiting.
Yes.
Yes.
Major issues.
And the longer, it's so funny when you're eating a toxic food or a food that you're allergic to or sensitive to, your body has this underlying or low grade inflammation, and you've gotten used to feeling like shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you abstain from it and your body starts to heal, and then somebody gets exposed to that, they literally can vomit across a room. They can be debilitated, bedridden for days. So, it's kind of, you're lucky. Maybe you can go away here or there. You get a stiff neck for a day or two. But for a lot of people, this is a decision where they have to do it for a lifetime.
Now, one thing I will say is, after my years of living gluten-free, there are a few times where I've traveled out of the country, cheated because I said, I may not be back here. Let me have the thing that they do here with the wheat in it that I'll never have again. And I've not paid for it. And I do think that a piece of what adds to my inflammation is whatever's been done to the wheat in this country over the last 30, 40, 50 years. If it's been selective, growing techniques that have, been picked for traits that are better for the farmers, but maybe not better for digestion, or if it's the chemicals that are used in the process of, the pesticides, or I know they put some chemicals on wheat so that they can harvest it uniformly. There are a lot of chemicals that have been used, and there are a lot of tweaks that have been done to the wheat that's grown in this country that seems to be what my body doesn't like.
Yeah.
And so specifically, on my honeymoon, I went to Turkey, and it was unbelievable. And I ate gluten pretty much the whole time and didn't have any problem.
Wow.
Nothing. No back pain, no neck pain, nothing. I don't know. I never really figured out exactly why that was, but I would assume that they don't have the same strains of wheat there that we have here. Maybe they're not using the same chemicals there that we do here. And for whatever reason, I was able to play without paying.
And that's cool. But if you're not going to Turkey or some of these other countries, then, you need to be at least educated that this may be one of the foods that is destroying you or giving you back problems or making you
low energy.
And there's a thing, Nick, and I can't speak on a high level to it, but if you're allergic or you have a sensitivity to a food, you can actually crave that food, which is weird. Like, I know I have a sensitivity or a full-blown allergy to peanut butter, and peanut butter or peanuts, but I'm somebody who eats peanuts, but I used to eat peanut butter all the time. And I know that I get a little itchy. So I definitely have an intolerance to it. And peanut butter would call me like a drug. And now that I don't eat it, when I smell it, I'm like, oh, I'd like to have peanut butter. But if you have a food that calls you, that could be a sign that you have an intolerance to it. So people because I always say to people when I tell them.
So perhaps I have an intolerance to Doritos.
I think everybody, they're great, right? But when I always say this to people when I work with somebody nutritionally, and I don't personally, and we'll get into this, I don't think anybody does great on wheat or gluten because it does a lot of different things in the body that is not great. But some people could get away with it. The word "get away with." When I have somebody and they give me a bunch of symptoms, I'm like, listen, you need to take this out of your diet. At least try it for 90 days. They look at me like I have 17 heads. And that right in itself can tell you how addictive that food group can be. Because if I turn around and say, Nick, don't eat corn, don't eat rice, you're like, all right. But if I tell you not to eat bread, not to eat pasta, well, there's gluten-free pasta, but you'd be like, I'm not doing that. Right there has got to tell you something that it's got a very addictive characteristic trait, and it does, because the opiate receptor side of your brain is what recognizes wheat or gliadin.
Well, it turns right into sugar in your bloodstream, right?
Yeah, but so does rice and corn, and everything basically turned into sugar. But wheat and gliadin, the protein molecule of gluten, has a very, very addictive nature to it, and it's recognized or accepted in the opiate receptor side of your brain, like morphine and heroin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's why people.
It's also in
they
so much of what's in the supermarkets and what's cheap and what's easy and, quick meals. If you're walking around in the middle of the day and you need a quick meal, you go for a slice of pizza. Or you're in, the city and you see a hot dog cart, you grab a quick dog.
Yep.
Or, any of the pastries, you go to a deli in the morning and you want to get yourself a muffin or you want to get yourself a bagel or any of these things. These quick, easy meals rely on gluten so heavily.
Well, that's the common sense stuff, right? That we're going to educate people on. But I know when we went over the notes before the video, it was where is it hidden?
Well, and we're going to get to that later in the video.
Yeah.
So the hidden places where gluten can be sneaking into your diet.
Because we're going to educate people. All right, I'll give up gluten. And then a lot of times for people that are watching this, I tried the gluten-free diet. Didn't work for me.
Because they actually didn't get gluten out of their diet.
They never went gluten-free.
Yeah.
They went gluten-free in their mind, but they didn't know all the hidden sources.
That's right.
And they never went gluten-free. So they said, you know what, Lynch? You know what, Nick? I gave up the pasta. I gave up the bread, and it didn't do shit. Screw you and your podcast. Well, no. It was in your soy sauce, and it was in your lipstick.
Mm-hmm.
All these things. Yeah, and you never went gluten-free. Yep. So you really didn't do it right. And that's why you don't know if it doesn't work for you or not.
All right, so let's just take it back really quick. I know you kind of touched on this, but what is gluten?
Gluten is a protein, because all carbohydrates or grains, I should say grains, everything is proteins, right? So gluten is the protein molecule gliadin. And it's just one of the proteins. I can't speak it on a high scientific level, but it's a protein that a lot of people, the digestive tract just can't accept. Mm-hmm. And if they keep on eating this particular protein, it can damage the microvilli in the intestines, which are these little tiny hairs that we all have in our intestines. And they're basically vacuums. They have these packets on them. And when we eat vitamins and minerals and all these different things, they're like vacuums that soak up the nutrition. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people cannot accept, or they're not handled to digest and assimilate gliadin, and it can poke holes or totally stifle and pack down or make the intestines swollen over the microvilli, okay, and really give you a myriad of problems, diarrhea, constipation. Now, no doctor, Nick, but let's talk about your back. So why would gluten hurt Nick Skolnick's back? Well, if my intestines are always swollen, they get swollen for breakfast. I eat my Cheerios.
Mm-hmm. A bagel.
Whatever, right? And then my sandwich at lunch. And then my pasta for dinner. Every time my intestines just start to calm down, because it's inflammation, boom, next meal. And my intestines are so swollen. Forget about all the vitamins and minerals that I'm not assimilating and taking in. I'm probably malnourished on top of it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I'm not thriving, or my sex drive, or some people may lose all their hair. There's a lot of, we can do 17 videos on this, okay? But in your case, your intestines were always being inflamed, and it was pushing on your back probably. And then your spinal erectors, because your intestines and your stomach and everything are by your lower back. And it was never a back problem. It was you had an inflamed intestinal tract.
Wow, that's interesting. I know I also have a little bits of arthritis here and there, and it seems like where the arthritis is what kind of gets inflamed first.
Well, I have another answer for that. So in all of our joints, we have what's called the synovium. And you ever do a set of curls or anything, Nick? And the first one, you're like a little creaky old man. And then by the second set and the third set, you're like, oh, I feel 19 again.
Yeah.
That's because in all your joints, you have a thing called the synovium, and it releases a thing called the synovial fluid. It's your self-oiling system. Well, if you look at the synovium and protein molecule under a microscope, the protein molecules look almost identical. Now, there's some thought that agriculture was never a thing. We created wheat, gluten, and rice and all that. Back in the day, there was none of that. So we're not equipped for that. So when you eat it, your intestines or your immune system sees it as a foreign invader, and it goes in and it attacks it. Just like if you get stung by a bee and you turn red. It's not the bee that did that. It's your immune system going in and making that red and hot to attack that bee venom,
Sure.
right? So when you're eating gluten, the protein molecule, your body's saying, hey, Skolnick, what are you doing? Your immune system's causing an inflammatory response. But because the protein molecule in gliadin just looks like the synovium in your joints, your body starts to attack its own joints.
Interesting.
Pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the things I couldn't do, Nick, is I couldn't do push-ups when I was eating gluten because I couldn't bend my left wrist back.
Oh, wow.
And now at the time, I didn't know it. I was like young guy. I was like, why is my wrist killing me? And that's not, we can get into why I particularly gave up gluten, but I noticed that when I gave up gluten, I was like, oh, I could do push-ups again. Isn't that weird? This is 20 years ago
Before you really
when the
understood what was
science
going on.
wasn't really as robust as it is now.
Sure. All right. So, what I think we should clearly define is the difference between a gluten intolerance and celiac disease, and just want to make sure what people, or I want to make sure that people understand that these are two different things that are caused by the gluten. So, can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, I can on a personal training level.
Sure.
And they are different, but they're not different. What do I mean by that, Nick? So celiac disease is an autoimmune system disease. It could be very
Debilitating.
debilitating, but it could cause a lot of problems. And some say that it could maybe potentially cause certain types of cancer. So if somebody has been diagnosed from celiac disease, now there's a blood test for it, but the blood test is not super accurate. So what they'll do is they'll go in and they'll take a couple of snips and they'll do a biopsy to see if you have celiac. If you get tested for positive for celiac, this is a long life commitment of removing gluten indefinitely.
Mhm. What are the symptoms that people would look for to know that they should go get tested? It's intestinal, right? If you're having issues going to the bathroom or GERD or things like that.
Yeah, so anything GI, but it can present itself with skin rashes, metallic taste in the mouth, hair loss, thyroid issues. It can present itself a lot of different ways. So maybe
Okay.
somebody goes online and just looks up symptoms,
Sure.
but there's a lot. Exhaustion, malaise, all these different things.
Okay.
But GI is a big thing.
Yeah.
So the problem is gluten intolerance or sensitivity has all the side effects that celiac does, but it's not a life or death situation. But who gives a because they can still have the constipation and the diarrhea and the fatigue and the depression and the thyroid issues. So the symptoms a lot of times are the same. It's just not as potentially deadly. So if somebody like yourself, you may not have celiac disease, and maybe you do, Nick. But for you, it seems to be just a stiff neck if you have it here or there, especially if you're in Turkey. Right? But it's kind of like it doesn't really matter because if you're having these symptoms and someone abstains from gluten, does it really matter, Nick, if you have gluten sensitivity or celiac disease? I would argue that no, because you're killing yourself one way or the other.
Right. Right. Now, of course, if people are going to make a major change to their diet, they should talk to their doctor before they do any of that.
Absolutely.
Right. You can listen to this podcast, and we've got some interesting advice for people, but talk to your doctor before you make a major change.
Yeah.
Is there anything that could happen that would be negative from taking gluten out of your diet?
Psychologically, yes. Right? So you may have to be the odd man out or woman out.
And we'll talk about this because going out with friends can be quite difficult.
The good news is, back when I went gluten-free, 18 years ago, it wasn't a big thing. People didn't know about it. So there was a little bit of replacements to choose from.
Yeah.
I remember I had a gluten-free muffin, bro, like 17 years ago. I knew this girl and she gave it to me as a blueberry muffin. I bit into it and like cracked and fell apart. It was just awful. But now, other than pizza, I mean, they have gluten-free pizza and it's good. It's just not like the real thing. But let me tell you something. My wife makes gluten-free pasta and cookies and cakes. And when we have parties, people tend to eat that stuff more than they do even the stuff with gluten in it. Now, the replacements, here's the good news about gluten-free, because the replacements are not healthy. They're just replacements.
Yeah.
They're generally made with sorghum flour or rice flour or potato flour.
Right. Just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean that it's good for you.
And that was a thing. Everybody's like, oh, I'm eating gluten-free now. I can, eat as much pasta and bread.
Muffins all day.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a healthier way for you to still have a vice, like cake and pasta and cookies. But these should occupy a very little bleep, a 1% in your daily diet anyway.
Right.
But when you go out, you may have to say no, or you might have to eat beforehand if there's a restaurant or a party. Like, you can't expect someone to reinvent Thanksgiving dinner just because you're the only one that's avoiding gluten.
So, and I say this to people all the time. Don't make my problem into your problem.
Correct.
I go to parties and I make sure that if I think there's going to be nothing for me to eat there, that I've eaten beforehand. I don't want anybody feeling bad. In fact, a lot of times I don't even say anything. I'll just, look around if there's some cheeses out or some meats. I know the things that I can have and that I can't. And if I'm pressed on it, I will tell people. But I don't want anybody to feel bad, because when you're putting on a get-together at your house or a party, you got enough crap to worry about. If you have to worry about everybody's dietary restriction, it's just impossible to have a party.
Especially these days.
And I will say that my wife and I had friends over recently, and it was almost comical. We started a text chain between everybody and be like, does anybody have any allergy? And it was like, boom, 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 boom. And the only thing that we could get was sushi. That was it. That was the only thing that we could have. Like, we ordered out, we had sushi come in because it was like, this one's allergic to corn, this one's allergic to wheat, this is allergic to dairy, this one doesn't eat chicken, this one doesn't eat that one. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So, if you go down that road, it can be quite difficult. Yeah. So like I said, I have a problem with gluten. I never make it someone else's problem. It's my problem.
Right. So today's day and age, it's not as problematic as when I had started eating gluten-free. So that is a negative, right? And there's some willpower that goes along with it. But I would argue that, and I'm sure you feel this way, once you do it for a while, like I remember when I met my wife, I'm divorced and remarried, and she's now gluten-free on her own terms. And in the beginning, she was eating stuff and she'd be like, is this okay that I eat this in front of you? I'm like, okay, I'm a grown man. And yes, I love you for it. But yeah, no, this is a decision I'm making, and I'm not going to make it about everybody else. So yes, that real pizza and the cheese dripping down your chin looks really good, and I want it, but I'm good. You can have it.
Oh, I tell people all the time when they eat something in front of me, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
I know what that bagel tastes like. It tastes amazing. And everything bagel with cream cheese, my mouth is actually watering right now thinking about it.
Exactly.
And I'm not a hater.
Right.
Good for you. You can have that.
Yep.
You have that. Tell me all about it. Don't hide it from me. Don't turn around. Don't apologize. Live your life.
Right.
I'm good. I'm a grown-up. I can handle it.
Right. So that would be the only negative that I can think about. Now, back in the day, if we did this video 10 years ago, there would be people challenging us, because by us saying that, we would take maybe potentially money out of certain companies' pockets if people listen to us.
Right.
But now they all knew that they jumped on board. And all these companies now, all these grain companies, all have gluten varieties. So
gluten-free breads are pretty good.
They're making their money.
Pastas are pretty good.
They jumped on the ship and they're like, all right, this is a real thing.
Well, they can charge more.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
they
For
probably
this
make
little
more,
tiny thing,
probably make
there's-
more money off the
Yeah,
gluten-free stuff.
exactly. And so the positive thing is if somebody, because I always try to look, or I've forced myself to be a glass half full guy instead of half empty. I think it's a major benefit to someone's health, longevity, and fitness and their physique if they are sensitive to gluten or they're allergic or they have celiac. Because the amount of shit that you have to avoid, there's nothing that you're avoiding that's helping.
Oh, no, this was me all the time. In between meals, I'd be like, let me grab a slice.
Exactly.
Quick one, a quick one. Oh, let me have 1 or 2 hot dogs real quick. Let me get that. I'm gonna have a pretzel off the street. Now, like all that stuff was not good for me to have in between meals.
No. All the stuff that you're supposed to be eating, for the most part, is gluten-free by design.
Vegetables,
Fruits.
not a drip of gluten in a vegetable.
Meats, fish, nuts, they're all gluten-free, unless they're, I guess you can have sugar-coated blah, blah, blah nuts, and then they have gluten in them, or gravy.
If it's not processed and things like
But
that.
if you're doing what we advocate for, Nick, and you're shopping the perimeter of the store and you're not going into the middle, the dark, deep hole of the middle of the grocery store, and you stay on the perimeter, most of the time, everything's gluten-free by default.
Yeah.
So I think it's a benefit. Yeah, you can look at the negative in anything, but I think it's a benefit if, like, I believe, Nick, by you having that back problem, you've probably tacked years, if not decades, to your life, and the quality of your life is going to go up exponentially because of that back problem. I feel like that back problem happened for you, not to you, because now you've removed. Think about all the shit. You just rattled it off.
Yeah.
Think about all the shit that you're not eating now because you don't want that back problem. You didn't eat the hot dogs and all the stuff you're not supposed to eat. And you're like,
the bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich in the morning, the bagels in the morning, all that stuff.
Right. And people are like, yeah, but I like it. But at what expense? So if the pain is a big motivator, right? We did a video on motivation. If you're in pain, no food is worth the pain. Like if you're at the point where it's hurting you to have sex with your wife because your back is getting thrown out, you're like, slice of pizza, I can't even tie my own shoes. I'm not eating pizza. And now you're leaner and healthy for it. So the Mike Lynch trainer taking I got to say no to this piece of cake and I got to go fed, you go to a wedding, let's say. You might have to eat a meal beforehand because there might not be anything for you. And that's a decision that you're making. But if you take a look around and scan that wedding, you'll probably be, and people are going to think I'm a you'll be hard pressed to find anybody in that wedding, except a handful of people that you want to look like. You'll see a lot of overweight, depressed, orthopedic nightmares because they're eating all that toxic food. So now you're walking in and maybe you're getting your glass of wine or your vodka and maybe you're picking out a piece of shrimp. And you say, oh, I'm a little jealous of all these people can eat whatever they want. Can they really? I would say, no, they can't. They're killing themselves with food.
Yeah. So let's talk about, because I think one of the big problems, and you just touched on this earlier, are all the hidden places that gluten can be, right?
Yeah.
Soy sauce is a big one, but very easy to get tamari, which is essentially soy sauce without the gluten. And I'm not sure, what it's used for, but there's something about when they process soy sauce that they're using.
It's a good filler.
They're using gluten in there. So what are some other places that people should be looking out for hidden gluten in their diet if they do want to take it out?
Right. So obviously you have to look on vitamins and, medications and stuff like that. It can't just say wheat free. Because sometimes if you go look on cheap vitamins and supplements, it will say no corn, no this, no that, no wheat. No wheat does not mean that it's no gluten.
Oh.
So it needs to say no wheat, no gluten. So right there, everybody's taking vitamin D or multivitamin. So that's like really one that people don't think about.
Okay.
But like you said, soy sauce is a big thing. A lot of people like sushi. I remember when I first started doing this again, not to toot my own horn, no one really knew this stuff. I forgot who I was dating at the time, my girlfriend at the time, used to put soy sauce in her talk about gluten-free soy sauce when we go to sushi restaurants here on Long Island.
They wouldn't have it for you.
They wouldn't even know what the hell I was talking about.
Yep.
One sushi restaurant got like not mad at me, but they were like, "Wait, we have soy sauce." I'm like, and I tried to explain to them what gluten was. I showed them the bottle, and they actually took it from me.
Well, you're not supposed to bring food into a restaurant,
Right.
so I get it.
But it was a place here in Plainview. They were great. They took it from me and they said, "Oh, you don't have to carry it. We'll just keep it for you." And when I came there, they brought my bottle out for me.
But VIP service.
Yeah, I mean, but now every place knows gluten-free. So soy sauce, it can be, I haven't ventured down this road yet, Nick, but I haven't started wearing lipstick yet. But apparently it could be in women's lipstick and stuff like that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, you have to also be very mindful for people that go out to restaurants. If you get a salad, let's say, Nick, and you say, "I'll have a salad with grilled chicken." Now, for everybody, they may think this is a gluten-free meal. Maybe not so much. Now, why do I know this? I know this because all three of my uncles on my mom's side are chefs. And they would take the grilled chicken, and they would put it in flour because flour traps moisture inside. So they would grill it, and then you would get this piece of chicken, and it looked like grilled chicken. But the flour, they would just dust it in flour. But it seals the moisture. And when you cut into my uncle's chicken cutlets, I mean, grilled chicken, it was so moist because that flour seals that moisture inside. But there you go. Now you're not gluten-free anymore. So when you go out to restaurants,
you have to be vocal about it.
Specific and say, "Listen, just lie it. I'm going to tell you right now, lie. Don't say I'm gluten-free. Say I have celiacs." Because if you say that, if they know what they're doing, they're not going to screw with it.
Yeah.
And then they're going to take a fresh piece of chicken and grill it for you. Because if you are celiac or you've been out of the gluten world for a long time, you will literally be either sick, diarrhea, you could be exhausted for a whole week just from that little piece of flour they put on. So your chicken tastes good. Listen, they're just doing their job. When you go into a restaurant, their job is, "Hey, Nick and Mike are here. Let's make them have a great experience."
So they come back.
So they come back because they can make a salad and grilled chicken at home on their own. We're going to make their salad and grilled chicken taste better than they ever could get at home. And that's why they're going to keep on coming back. But they can be setting you back and your health back if you're not vocal. So it's your decision and it's your obligation to be communicative to your server and say, "Hey, listen, I cannot have any gluten."
Yeah.
And that's a big place that people don't think about.
Now, another thing is when you're getting food that's been in a deep fryer, if it's fried in a fryer that's frying, breaded items. So if they're putting onion rings in that fryer and they're putting chicken nuggets in that fryer and all that stuff, even if you're having French fries, which are just potato, you're getting all that cross-contamination that comes in there too, and that can be difficult for people.
Yeah, and anybody that's watching this, they're going to feel overwhelmed with that, but it's a matter of your life, and your health. And if you do have undiagnosed celiac, it could be shaving decades off your life or really just hold you back in every aspect of your life.
It's not as hard as it sounds.
No.
Any change you make in your life can be difficult for a week, 2 weeks, but as you start to get used to all these things, it's just automatic. When I go into restaurants, a lot of times now they just have a gluten-free symbol next to an item. And I would still mention to them, "Hey, I want this, but I'm just letting you know I'm gluten-free, I'm celiac," whatever it is, right? But it's quite simple to do. Like you said, most whole foods, vegetables, fruits, meats, fish, all these things don't have gluten organically in them anyway. So it's not as hard as it sounds.
And this is very important that you're talking about the fryer oil. And just not to beat a dead horse, but I will, because it's very important, Nick, for people not to be making all these changes in their weekly diet, exercising, doing cardio, and then they go out for their cheat meal on a Saturday night and they have French fries and they can't figure out why they still feel like shit or whatever. And they're doing the labor, man. They're making all their food, they're prepping their food, and they're doing everything. And then that one meal that they don't know about, the deep fryer oil, sets them back. And it sets them back, and then they have it next Saturday, and they just say, "I went gluten-free and I still feel like shit." my blood pressure's up, my hair's still falling out, my sex drive's down. I can't lose that last 10 pounds because of these hidden places. And that's a major thing. And that's why people that go gluten-free, a lot of times they give it up because that didn't work. It's because of these little tiny nuggets that we're giving them that they don't know about.
All right, I want to end it out. We've been on this for a while. Just quickly remind people, I think you said this before, but how long should people give this a go before they should expect to see some kind of a difference or a benefit?
Technically, it takes a whole year for you to be 100% gluten-free. So I would say if you've educated yourself, you listen to what we talked about here in this video, and you've educated yourself, and you really know that you have all the gluten out of your diet. If you have a sensitivity, celiac disease, or a intolerance to it, I would say give yourself at least 90 days. 90 days before you make a fair assessment and say, and at 90 days, you're either going to feel phenomenal, and if you feel good, Nick, be hopeful and be psyched because there's much more to come.
Yeah.
Because it takes a whole year, because toxins can bury themselves in your body fat. And by the way, sometimes when people really go gluten-free, it was the thing holding them back, because some people are exercising and they're slaving away and they're doing all the labor and they're eating healthy, and then they take this one food out, and there's other foods besides this, and all of a sudden they just start dropping body fat like crazy. And if you feel good at 90 days, man, wait until 365 days. But at that point, if at 90 days, you say, I don't feel any different, you go through the checklist and you do a search, where can gluten be looming and hiding? And then maybe you're one of these lucky individuals that don't need to give it up.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on our gluten video. I think we got into some really good information. We learned a lot. I know again, thank you, Mike, for helping me get to this place and avoiding my back problems.
My pleasure, Nick.
Hey, it's been nice. It's been nice. And let us know if you are gluten-free and you've had success taking gluten out of your diet, or if you are thinking about trying it, leave us a comment, like the video, tell a friend about the podcast. It really helps us out.
Like Nick said, this is dear to my heart. I was advocating gluten-free way before it was a trend or common knowledge. So if you have any stories or comments, leave them below, and we'd love to see that. So that's it. That's all I have. Thank you very much, and give it a 90-day try, and you might be surprised on how you look and feel. So we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Please hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any content in the future.